some of you may have tried auto weight painting before, but you may have not known what it meant. This should hopefully clear up a bit of what rigging actually does. So what I've done is I've made just a plane. I've given it one cut down the middle and it's just a regular old plane, same size. This rig just consists of two bones, one called left, one called right, and all I've done is I've just put it on this edge. So if I do the average method of selecting the mesh, selecting the rig, pressing Control P, and then do automatic weights, we've now got it magically rigged somehow. In a way, yeah, that if you go into pose mode and move these bones, they will affect the mesh. But let's look what that actually does. So if I undo that, if I click on this normal plane here, we can see that in here, in the data of this object, we can see that there are no vertex groups. And what a vertex group is it takes every single one of these vertices and it applies a certain value to it. So if I create a vertex group, and just to visualize this I'm going to go into weight paint mode. This has nothing to do with weight painting at the moment, but you can see that this is displaying this group. If I remove this group, I can still see that it's displaying something, but it won't actually display any values. So let's give it some data to work with. Let's add a group, and then let's say I'll assign this one to it as a weight of 1. What that's doing is that's making this group tell this plane that all of these vertices have been given a weight to this group or have not been assigned to it at all. So it's a snapshot of all of these vertices, but with different weights assigned to each one, or a not on weight at all. So if we go back into here, if we press V, we can see that on here there's a new menu pop up which shows vertex weights. Here we can see that it's on group, which is the name of this. So if I change this to hello, this changes. So if I check here, that disappears because there's no weights attributed to these vertices at all on this entire object. However, this one has attributed one value to hello, and this value could be anything. So I could just assign it to 0.48 and it will do that. So this is very useful in a lot of things. You could use this for hair particles. You can use this for basically every modifier. So if I give it a bevel, you can give it a vertex group, give it hello, and it'll only bevel those edges, but that's I'm digressing here. So let's remove this. Let's press V to come off of that. Go back into edit mode. I'm going to remove this vertex group. So now let's go back here and apply this with automatic weights. So now if I select this again, we can see that it's given us automatically 2 vertex groups. One named after each of the bones in this rig. So if I go into here, we can see that this bone is named right and this bone is named left. So those are the vertex groups. So if I go into weight paint mode again, I can inspect what this weight looks like. So if I press V, I can see that on here it is weighted exactly 1 to right. Down here, it's given more than 1. So that means that this vertice has been given a weight of 0.33 to left and 0.667 to right. So if I select right, that selects this vertex group and it shows me that this has been this colour to this right. So now if I click left, it will show me that it's there. And this is what weight painting is. It tells the vertice to track this bone with this vertex group, because every single vertex group here is assigned to a single bone. So if I say take this bone and move it and look at this in weight painting mode, if I say rename this to like right 6, it no longer does anything because this bone is called right and these vertex groups correspond to those bones that are named exactly the same as them. So you could feasibly make a new vertex group, call it right again, and just get rid of it, and then make a new weight group for it, if you really wanted to. You could even manually parent this object to this bone rig, and then give it individual vertex groups of your making. Or you could just, instead of do that, so if I get rid of all of these, Alt G to put that back, remove this parent, so remove that parent, reparent it, empty groups. What this is going to do is this is going to give us two vertex groups named after all the bones in this armature. If I had set them on weight paint mode, none of them have any weights on them at all. None are assigned at all, which is usually the way you want to start. So let's talk about the act of how bones behave with weight groups. So, I've gone to a different layer for this. Let's look at this one. So, on weight paint mode, if I select this bone, be in pose mode. So if you're in an object and it's in weight paint mode, and you're on an armature that's in pose mode, then you could select these and it will show you the weight groups for you. So, a common misconception is that if I go into weight view mode, I can see that on right it's been given a value of 1. On left it's been given a value of 0, and on here it's been given a value of 0.5. So now, if I move this bone to the right, it should pull this with a weight of 1, and this with a rate of feasibly half what this should be. So let's do it. Now it's not actually doing anything different. It's moving this with the same force it's pulling this. So why is that? Well, the only way that a bone knows how to pull a vertex is if it's been given a weight to something else. So if I say, look at the other example, this one. So I've come off A to select it, go to this one. I could see that this one has been given a weight of 1 to right, and this one has been given a weight of 0.5 to right and 0.5 to left. So if I move this bone, they're shared the weight between them. And now this is how you should always do it, because if you have a weight of 0.5 and 0.5, you could easily work out that that adds up to 1, and it would have a 50-50 ratio. So if I change this to 0.7 and then this to 0.3, I can then see that this one moves more vigorously towards right than it does to left. In fact, it would be a exactly 70-30% ratio on movement. However, an important thing to realise is that this is proportional. So if I say put this to 300, or 2, but if I just put this both to 1, you can see that this adds up to 1, whereas this adds up to 2. However, they've both been given the same weight. So if I move this, it will do exactly the same thing. So this is 50% of the total of this added together. So 1 plus 1 is 2. This is get pulled with a force of 1 to the left and pulled with a force of 1 to the right. Therefore, it will be averaged out to the centre. So you can also see in this example here, that I've given this value 1 to all, and this one value 1 to the right, and this one value 1 to the left, and it still does exactly halfway between it. So weighting is proportional. It can be arbitrarily huge, but what's best is to have it normalized. So if you click this button, it will automatically put it to a proportion that will add up to 1. And that is what normalizing your weight paints does. It's just best to leave it like that, even though really it doesn't matter. It could be 10 billion on this one and 10 billion on this one, and it wouldn't really matter. So if you look in weight painting mode, say if I go to blur, you can see here it's got an auto normalize key. So if I tick that, now what that means is if I go back off of vertex mode, because if you do in vertex mode you don't have any selected, then this will do nothing. However, if you have all of them selected, it works on all of them. But let's ignore that. So if I go back into this mode, I can free paint, So if I go onto here, blur that, I go back onto here, it's automatically normalized this for me. So if I change that from auto normalize to 0, and I just paint randomly, I go back into vertex select mode, here it's gone above. So if I auto normalize, it's actually giving us that proportion of left and right. So being careful of how you weight paint is essential to having a good rig. But this is the basis on which all weight paint and rigging is based on. And it's essential that you understand that if you're weight painting in any way, to avoid situations like this where you just shear your mesh really harshly, even though you may be thinking you're weighting at 0.5, you're actually just giving it a 1-to-1 ratio moving with this bone. So I hope that clears it up.